Hi, in this video I'm going to go over some of the very basics of two-dimensional geometry creation in Mastercam. So I'm trying to keep these videos to around 5 minutes for my students and hopefully still be able to cover the material in depth enough that it makes sense. But I don't want to go too much over that 5 minute time frame for each of these segments. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. What I'm going to be doing is creating 2D wireframe geometry, and it's going to be a rectangle. It's going to be a two-dimensional representation of the part that we took a look at in the PowerPoint presentation that had the slot cut right through the center of it. So I'm going to go over to my wireframe tab here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the rectangle command or the rectangle tool. Whenever you actually go to enable one of the commands in Mastercam, a couple of different things happen here. One is that you end up with a dialog box on the left-hand side here that opens up. And the other thing that happens is you get an on-screen prompt that prompts you for something. So in this case, it's telling me to select a new position for the first corner. So I'm going to select a position for my corner of my rectangle, or in this case, for the center of my rectangle. So you can see over here what I have enabled is this anchor to center, which will enable me to anchor the center of the rectangle to wherever I want. And what I'm going to do is actually anchor it to the origin, anchor the center of the rectangle to the origin. The other thing about this, that when these little commands pop up here, they may be off of your actual graphics screen, so they could be located somewhere else. And you can see kind of what happens here is that you end up with not really being able to see it. And so if you kind of just drag it back onto the screen, they'll always then pop up in that same position. So that's what I always try to do, because unlike some other CAD packages that I've had experience with, the messages that do pop up here in Mastercam are typically very useful. So at any rate, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to select this center here, and as I drag my mouse out, you can see that it's showing where I'm going to be creating this rectangle. There's a few different ways that I can do this. I can either select specify a point, or I can specify a width and a height. In this example, what I'm going to do is specify a width and a height over here in the dialog box. So in this case, the width that I'm going to make this is, and the width, of course, is in the X direction. So I'm going to make this a 4 to coincide with our 4-inch wide block. And for the height, I'm going to actually make this 2 inches, because again, those are the dimensions of our block. So I'm going to go ahead then, once I get that, you can see what happens is I'm still in this rectangle command. I'm going to get out of that rectangle command simply by going over here and selecting OK. So this little green check mark. I'm going to do the same thing to put the representation of our slot in the center of the part. I'm going to go back into the rectangle command, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rectangle at the very center of this with a width of 4, so that it goes all the way across the part. But then I'm going to make my height, and actually what I'm going to end up doing is making approximately a 1/2 inch slot. But you're going to see what I'm going to do here is actually make this a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch. And we'll go over why I did that in an upcoming video when we actually do the machining aspects in Mastercam. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit the enter button, and that places my slot, the representation, in the center of the rectangle. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of the rectangle command. So right now I've got everything set up. Again, very simple geometry. This represents the outside perimeter of my part, and this represents the cut through the center of the part. The last thing that I want to do here, though, is I want to go ahead and move this so that the origin, so that the lower left corner of the rectangle is at the origin of my coordinate system here. And I can easily do that by getting into this transform tab and using the move to origin command, and then selecting the point to translate from is literally going down here and selecting, left clicking and selecting this corner, and it moves everything over. And that's where I want it to be positioned for what I'm going to be doing in the next video, which is actually setting up the toolpaths. I can also, one more thing before we leave this video, is you'll notice that I now have this this rectangle and the toolpath representation here. Everything is turned purple. You can actually go back to the Home tab and use this function called Clear Colors to bring everything back to the original geometry color. So that concludes this video, and in the next video we'll go ahead and set up the toolpaths for this